What if there was a place where the world goes completely silent, where roads disappear into endless wilderness, and where nature still rules without limits? This is Yukon, one of the loneliest and most untouched places on Earth. And what you are about to see is a journey into a world few have truly experienced. Before anything else, imagine a place where the road seems to disappear into nothing, where forests stretch for hundreds of miles without a single interruption, and where silence is so deep it almost feels alive. No traffic, no crowds, no noise of modern life. Just wind, snow, stone, and sky. This is Yukon, and what you are about to witness is one of the last truly wild corners of our planet. There are places on Earth that feel inhabited, and then there are places like this, where nature doesn't feel like scenery, it feels like the only authority. In Yukon, distance is not measured in kilometers, but in emptiness. The spaces between towns are so vast that time itself feels different here. Slower, heavier, more honest. As the journey begins, the landscape opens up like a forgotten world. Endless pine forests stretch across rolling terrain, their dark green fading into mist as they climb toward distant mountains. Rivers carve their way through valleys that have existed for thousands of years without change. And above it all, the sky feels larger here, wider, as if it was pulled back just to make room for the wilderness below. This is a land shaped by extremes. In summer, the sun refuses to set, bathing the land in endless golden light. In winter, darkness arrives early and stays long, wrapping everything in deep blue silence. Yet in both seasons, Yukon never feels empty. It feels alive in a quiet, powerful way that only untouched nature can express. Travel deeper and the sense of isolation grows stronger. Roads become narrower, towns become rare, and human presence feels almost like an echo rather than a constant. Wooden cabins appear scattered across the land, standing alone beneath towering trees. Smoke rises slowly from chimneys, drifting into cold air that carries the scent of pine and snow. Life here is not fast. It is deliberate, connected to the rhythm of nature rather than the demands of modern cities. Whitehorse, the capital of Yukon, appears like a small heartbeat in the middle of this vast wilderness. It sits beside a powerful river, surrounded by mountains that seem to watch over it silently. Even here, the city feels different. There are no towering skylines, no overwhelming crowds. Instead, there are quiet streets, wooden buildings, and a closeness to nature that defines everyday life. The wilderness is never far away. In fact, it feels like it begins just beyond the edge of town. But the true story of Yukon is not in its towns. It is in the spaces between them. It is in the endless highways that cut through forests, where no other roads exist for miles. It is in the frozen lakes that reflect the sky like broken glass. It is in the mountains that rise without warning, sharp and ancient, covered in snow, even in seasons when the valleys are green. Wildlife moves through this land as it always has. Moose step slowly through wetlands like silent giants. Eagles circle above rivers, scanning for movement below. Bears roam deep forests where human footsteps rarely reach. Every creature here belongs fully to the land, shaped by survival, instinct, and the raw truth of nature. And then there is the silence. Not an absence of sound, but a presence of it. A kind of quiet that feels layered, as if the world is speaking in a language too soft to hear clearly. The wind through trees, the distant cracking of ice, the slow flow of rivers that have never stopped moving. In Yukon, silence is not emptiness, it is awareness. As the journey continues, the scale of everything becomes overwhelming. Mountains rise higher than expectation, valleys stretch farther than imagination, and the sky feels closer than anywhere else on Earth. It is a place that reminds you how small human life is in comparison to the vastness of nature, yet how connected everything still is. There is a strange beauty in isolation here. It does not feel lonely in the way people often imagine loneliness. Instead, it feels pure, uninterrupted, honest, a reminder that the world was not always filled with noise and speed. There was once only land, water, sky, and time. Yukon still carries that memory, and as the light fades at the end of the day, the wilderness transforms again. Shadows stretch across the forests, rivers darken into mirrors of twilight, and the mountains become silhouettes against a deepening sky. Stars begin to appear, one by one, until the entire heavens are filled with light untouched by cities. In that moment, standing within this vast northern world, it becomes clear that Yukon is not just a destination. It is a reminder of what the Earth once was, and what still remains when everything unnecessary is stripped away. A place where silence speaks louder than words, and where nature still tells the oldest story of all. Before you even reach the edge of Whitehorse, the land begins to change its rhythm. The endless wilderness slowly loosens its grip, and in its place appears something unexpected. Not a sprawling city, not a dense urban center, but a quiet settlement resting beside a powerful river, surrounded on all sides by mountains, forest, and sky. Whitehorse is not a city that overwhelms you. It welcomes you gently, as if it knows it is only a small part of something far greater. This is the capital of Yukon. Yet, it feels more like a frontier town shaped by nature than a modern capital shaped by industry. Wooden buildings line the streets, their colors softened by cold winds and northern light. Roads are wide but never crowded. Life moves at a pace that feels almost synchronized with the land itself. Nothing here feels rushed, because nothing here can afford to be disconnected from nature. The Yukon River flows through the heart of Whitehorse like a living memory. Strong, wide, and constant, it carries stories older than the town itself. Long before roads, before buildings, before borders, this river was the main pathway through the north. It connected indigenous communities, supported trade routes, and later became a silent witness to the gold rush that changed this region forever. Standing beside the river, there is a sense of continuity. The water does not pause for history. It moves forward endlessly, cutting through rock and forest with patient strength. In summer, it reflects long hours of golden daylight. In winter, it becomes partially frozen, its surface locked in shifting patterns of ice that look almost like time itself has paused for a moment. Whitehorse exists because of this river. Its name comes from the whitewater rapids that once resembled the flowing mane of a galloping horse. Even though the rapids were changed by development, the memory of that natural force still defines the identity of the place. It is a reminder that even human settlement here is shaped by something far more powerful than architecture or planning. Life in Whitehorse carries a unique balance between modern necessity and wilderness reality. There are schools, shops, cafes, and small businesses, but just beyond them, nature begins again without hesitation. It is not uncommon for residents to see wildlife near the edges of town. The boundary between city and wilderness is not strict here. It is soft, almost invisible. The air itself feels different. Clean, sharp, and cold in a way that wakes every sense. Even in summer, there is a freshness that comes from being far removed from industrial density. In winter, that same air becomes intense, carrying the kind of cold that changes sound, slows movement, and transforms ordinary moments into something memorable. As evening approaches, Whitehorse takes on a different personality. The sky stretches wide above the river, painted in soft gradients of orange, pink, and deep blue. Reflections ripple across the water's surface, doubling the beauty of the scene. People walk along riverfront paths, not in hurry, but in quiet appreciation of the surroundings. There is a stillness here that feels intentional. It is not emptiness, it is space. Space to breathe, to observe, to exist without pressure. In larger cities, silence often feels uncomfortable. In Whitehorse, silence feels natural, even comforting. It becomes part of daily life rather than something unusual. Surrounding the town, mountains rise in every direction. They are not distant decorations. They are present, close, and constant. Snow lingers on their peaks for much of the year, reminding everyone below that the climate here follows its own rules. These mountains do not just frame Whitehorse, they define it. They limit expansion, shape weather patterns, and influence every aspect of life. Yet within this remote setting, there is resilience. People here are deeply connected to the land. They understand seasons not as dates on a calendar, but as shifts in behavior, temperature, and light. They prepare for long winters with care, and they embrace long summer days with gratitude. Survival here is not dramatic. It is quiet, practical, and deeply rooted in respect for nature. Whitehorse also carries echoes of history. The legacy of the Klondike Gold Rush still lingers in its identity. While modern life has replaced much of that era, the spirit of exploration remains embedded in the region. Stories of fortune seekers, harsh journeys, and extreme endurance are still part of local memory, reminding everyone that this land has always demanded strength from those who enter it. But beyond history and geography, there is something else that defines Whitehorse. A feeling that is difficult to describe, but easy to sense. A sense that life here is stripped down to what matters most: nature, community, survival, and time. Nothing excessive, nothing unnecessary, just the essentials of existence. As night falls, the town becomes quieter. Lights glow softly from windows, reflecting off snow or water depending on the season. Above, the sky opens into a vast canvas of stars. With so little artificial light around, the night sky feels closer, more detailed, almost overwhelming in its clarity. Standing in Whitehorse at night, there is a realization that this is not a place that tries to impress through scale or spectacle. Instead, it leaves an impression through honesty. It shows life in a simplified form, where the presence of nature is always stronger than the presence of people. And in that balance between human life and the wilderness, Whitehorse becomes more than just a capital. It becomes a threshold, a meeting point between modern existence and ancient land. A reminder that even in the most remote corners of the world, life continues with quiet strength, shaped by rivers, mountains, and time itself. Before rivers had names and before maps divided the land into borders, there was only movement, water carving its path through stone, forests leaning toward the wind, and life following the rhythm of nature without interruption. In Yukon, that ancient rhythm still exists, and nowhere is it more powerful than along the Yukon River, a waterway that has shaped history, culture, and survival for thousands of years. The river does not rush to announce itself. It arrives slowly, steadily, with a presence that feels both calm and unstoppable. It winds through valleys, cuts between mountains, and stretches across vast distances that connect remote communities in ways no road ever could. From its glacial origins to its far-reaching delta, the Yukon River carries more than water. It carries memory. Standing beside its banks, there is a sense that time behaves differently here. The surface of the water reflects everything above it: sky, clouds, and shifting light, as if the river is holding a mirror to the world. In the early hours of the morning, mist rises gently from its surface, blurring the line between land and water. It feels as though the world is still forming itself, moment by moment, in silence. Long before modern settlements, the Yukon River was a lifeline for Indigenous communities. It was a route of travel, a source of food, and a foundation for culture and storytelling. Canoes moved along its currents, guided not by engines or technology, but by knowledge passed through generations. Every bend in the river held meaning. Every current carried experience. Life was shaped by understanding the river, not resisting it. Even today, that connection remains visible. Small communities still rest along its edges, where life continues in harmony with seasonal cycles. Fishing remains an essential part of survival and tradition. The river provides not just resources, but identity. It is part of who people are, not just where they live. As the river flows onward, it passes through landscapes that feel untouched by time. Forests grow thick and wild along its edges, their reflections trembling on the water's surface. In some places, the river widens into quiet expanses that resemble inland seas. In others, it narrows between rocky cliffs, its current quickening as it moves forward with quiet determination. Wildlife thrives here in ways that feel instinctive and undisturbed. Eagles soar above the water, scanning for movement below. Bears move cautiously along the banks during salmon runs, part of an ancient cycle that continues without interruption. Moose step into shallow waters, their presence calm but powerful, as if they belong to both land and river equally. The Yukon River is also a witness to history. During the Klondike Gold Rush, it became a highway for thousands of prospectors seeking fortune in the north. Boats crowded its waters, carrying hope, desperation, and ambition. Along its banks, temporary settlements grew and disappeared, leaving behind stories etched into the land. The river watched all of it without changing its course. That is what makes it remarkable. Through every era, every migration, every shift in human presence, the river has remained constant. It does not rush toward progress or resist change. It simply continues, as it always has, shaped only by nature itself. In summer, the Yukon River becomes a ribbon of light stretching across the landscape. Long daylight hours bathe its surface in gold, and the surrounding wilderness seems almost infinite in its brightness. Canoes return to its waters, echoing ancient travel routes, while modern boats move carefully along its current. Life expands outward during this season, following the warmth and flow of the river. In winter, everything transforms. The river slows, then freezes, becoming a silent, frozen pathway across the land. Snow settles along its edges, and ice forms intricate patterns beneath the surface. Even in stillness, it does not lose its presence. Instead, it becomes something different, something solid and quiet, holding the memory of movement beneath layers of ice. There is a moment, standing by the Yukon River, when everything else feels distant. The noise of the world fades, replaced by wind, water, and silence. It is not emptiness, it is depth, a reminder that nature does not need to be loud to be powerful. As sunlight shifts across the sky, the river changes with it. Shadows stretch longer, reflections deepen, and the entire landscape begins to feel like a living painting. Every detail is subtle, but nothing is still. The river continues its journey, crossing mountains, valleys, and time itself, without pause or hesitation. And in that endless movement, there is something profoundly grounding. The realization that, while human life is temporary and constantly shifting, some forces remain steady. The Yukon River is one of them. It is not just a feature of the landscape. It is the spine of the wilderness, the thread that connects past and present, nature and memory, silence and life. To stand beside it is to witness continuity in its purest form, a reminder that even in the most remote corners of the world, life does not begin or end with humanity. It flows, just like the river, endlessly forward. There are moments in life when the world above you feels like it is no longer part of the earth, as if the sky itself opens up and reveals something hidden, something ancient, something almost beyond explanation. In Yukon, that moment arrives when night falls completely and the horizon disappears into darkness. Then, slowly, the sky begins to change. At first, it is subtle, a faint shimmer in the distance, barely noticeable against the deep northern night. But within minutes, that shimmer grows stronger, spreading across the sky like a living wave. Green light begins to form, then violet, then soft traces of blue and white, all moving in silence. This is the Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights, one of the most extraordinary natural displays on Earth. Standing beneath it feels like stepping into another reality. The air is cold, sharp, and still. There is no sound except the faint movement of wind through frozen trees. Above, the sky is no longer empty. It is alive. Light flows across it in slow motion, bending, twisting, and reshaping itself with no pattern that the human eye can fully predict. It feels less like watching the sky and more like witnessing it breathe. In Yukon, where darkness stretches long through the winter months, the northern lights become more than a spectacle. They become part of life itself. People wait for them, watch for them, and sometimes travel deep into wilderness just to witness their arrival. There is no guarantee they will appear on any given night, which makes every sighting feel like a gift rather than an event. The science behind them is known. Charged particles from the sun collide with Earth's atmosphere, creating light in different colors depending on altitude and gas composition. But knowing the science does not reduce the feeling. If anything, it makes the experience even more profound, because something so distant, so cosmic, is interacting directly with the sky above this quiet, frozen land. As the lights intensify, they begin to move more dramatically. Waves ripple across the sky, sometimes slow and graceful, sometimes fast and unpredictable. Curtains of light stretch from horizon to horizon, rising and falling as if responding to an invisible rhythm. At times, the entire sky seems to spin gently, as though the universe itself is turning overhead. Below this cosmic display, the land remains still. Snow-covered forests stand motionless, their shapes softened by darkness. Frozen lakes reflect faint echoes of the sky above, doubling the sense of wonder. Mountains fade into silhouettes, watching silently as light transforms the night. Everything on Earth feels grounded, while everything above feels limitless. There is a unique silence that exists under the aurora. It is not just the absence of sound, but a deeper kind of quiet, one that feels almost respectful. Even human thoughts seem to slow down. Conversations become whispers. Movement becomes stillness. It is as if the world itself understands that something extraordinary is happening overhead. In moments like this, time feels less defined. Minutes stretch without warning. The sky shifts and changes so gradually that it becomes easy to forget everything else. There is no urgency, no destination, no expectation, only presence, only observation, only light moving across endless darkness. For indigenous cultures of the North, the Northern Lights carry stories and meanings that go far beyond science. They are seen as spiritual forces, ancestors, or guides, depending on tradition. In some stories, they are believed to be spirits dancing across the sky. In others, they are messages or signs from another realm. These interpretations reflect something important. The aurora has always been more than just light. It has always been meaning. As the night deepens, the display often grows stronger. The sky fills with motion, as if an invisible current is flowing above the earth. Colors intensify, shifting from soft green to bright, almost electric hues. Occasionally, faint reds or purples appear, rare and striking, adding depth to the already surreal scene. Standing in the cold, watching this unfold, there is a realization that no photograph or description can fully capture what it feels like. The scale is too large, the movement too fluid, the atmosphere too immersive. It is something that must be experienced in silence, under an open sky, far from artificial light. And yet, despite its grandeur, the aurora does not feel distant. It feels close, almost personal, as if the sky is performing only for those who are present in that exact moment. It reminds you that Earth is not separate from the universe, but part of it, that above the quiet forests and frozen rivers of Yukon, there is a constant interaction between planet and cosmos. As the night begins to fade toward early morning, the lights slowly weaken. The waves of color become softer, more scattered, until only faint traces remain. Then, gradually, the sky returns to darkness. But even after it disappears, its presence lingers in memory. Because the Northern Lights are not just something you see, they are something you remember differently. Something that stays with you long after the cold has left your hands and the night has passed. A reminder that even in the quietest, most remote places on Earth, the universe is always moving, always communicating, always alive. There are places on Earth where the scale of nature becomes almost impossible to comprehend, where mountains are not just high, but overwhelming, where glaciers are not just frozen ice, but ancient forces that have shaped the land for thousands of years. In Yukon, that place has a name: Kluane National Park. As you approach it, the world begins to feel larger, quieter, and more distant. Roads stretch into wilderness with no clear end. Forests thin out, giving way to rocky terrain and open valleys carved by time itself. Then, suddenly, the mountains appear, not in the distance like background scenery, but fully present, rising with such force and magnitude that they seem to redefine the horizon. Kluane is not a landscape you simply observe. It is a landscape you feel. It surrounds you in every direction, towering above and stretching beyond what the eye can process in a single glance. Some of the highest peaks in Canada rise here, their summits permanently covered in snow and ice, even when the valleys below shift with seasonal change. At the heart of this wilderness lies one of the largest non-polar ice fields in the world, a vast frozen expanse that holds centuries of compressed snowfall, slowly moving under its own weight. It does not appear to move, yet it does, inch by inch, shaping valleys, feeding rivers, and carving the land with patient persistence. Standing near these glaciers, there is a silence unlike anywhere else. Not just the absence of sound, but a silence shaped by scale. Even wind feels distant here. Even your own footsteps seem small against the enormity of the ice and stone around you. It is a place where human presence feels temporary, while nature feels permanent. The mountains of Kluane rise in layers, one behind another, fading into mist and cloud. Their surfaces are sharp, jagged, and ancient, shaped by pressure and time rather than sudden change. Rivers begin here, born from melting ice, flowing downward through valleys that stretch for miles. These waters eventually join larger systems, carrying fragments of this frozen world into distant landscapes. Wildlife exists here in a way that feels deeply adapted to the extremes. Mountain goats move across steep cliffs with impossible precision, their white coats blending into snow and rock. Grizzly bears roam valleys in search of seasonal food sources, their presence powerful yet rarely seen. Eagles circle high above, scanning vast distances with patient focus, as if they belong more to the sky than to the land below. Weather in Kluane is not predictable in the way people often expect. It shifts quickly, shaped by altitude and geography. One moment, the sky is clear, revealing endless mountain ranges under bright light. The next, clouds roll in, wrapping peaks in mist and transforming the entire landscape into something almost mythical. Visibility can change in minutes, turning familiar views into hidden worlds. There is a feeling in Kluane that time behaves differently. Not in hours or days, but in geological patience. The mountains did not rise quickly. The glaciers did not form overnight. Everything here is the result of slow, continuous transformation. It is a reminder that nature does not rush, even when it is creating something immense. In summer, the ice fields glisten under long northern daylight. Snow melts slowly, feeding rivers that rush through valleys with fresh energy. Wildflowers appear in patches where conditions allow, adding unexpected color to an otherwise rugged environment. The contrast is striking. Fragile life existing beside massive stone and ice. In winter, the park becomes even more intense in its stillness. Snow covers everything, smoothing sharp edges and creating a landscape that feels almost infinite in its quietness. The cold is deep and absolute, changing the way sound travels and how distance is perceived. In this season, Kluane feels less like a place to visit and more like a world paused in time. There is a humbling quality to standing in this environment. It does not demand attention. It does not perform. It simply exists, vast and indifferent to human scale. Yet in that indifference, there is beauty. Because it removes distraction, it strips everything down to presence. You are no longer observing nature as something separate. You are inside it. The glaciers themselves are perhaps the most powerful symbol of this place. They move slowly, almost invisibly, yet their impact is immense. They carve valleys, shape rivers, and leave behind landscapes that will continue to evolve long after human memory fades. They are not static. They are alive in their own frozen way, constantly changing even when they appear still. As light shifts across the mountains, shadows stretch and contract, revealing new textures in the rock and ice. Entire valleys change appearance depending on the time of day. What looks harsh in one moment becomes soft in another. The landscape refuses to stay fixed, even when it feels eternal. And then there is the silence again, always returning. Not empty, but full of scale, presence, and the slow breathing of a land that has existed long before observation and will continue long after. Kluane National Park is not a destination that can be fully captured in a single visit or a single image. It is something that stays with you in fragments. The shape of a mountain, the sound of distant ice, the feeling of standing somewhere that is far larger than yourself. In the end, it is not just about seeing glaciers or mountains. It is about understanding perspective, about realizing that some parts of the world are not meant to be conquered or controlled, but simply witnessed. And in that witnessing, something quiet changes within you. In Yukon, survival is not an idea. It is a daily rhythm written into the land itself. Every forest, every mountain slope, every frozen valley holds stories of endurance shaped by instinct, adaptation, and time. Here, wildlife is not separated from the environment. It is part of it, fully integrated into a world where only the strongest rhythms of nature remain unbroken. As dawn breaks over the wilderness, the first signs of life appear slowly. Light spreads across snowfields and forest edges, revealing movement where the night had hidden everything. A moose steps into view, tall and deliberate, moving through shallow waters or dense brush with quiet confidence. Its presence feels ancient, as if it has always belonged to this landscape and always will. In the distance, forests stretch endlessly, their silence occasionally broken by the call of birds or the rustle of unseen movement. The trees here are not just scenery. They are shelter, food source, and boundary. Within them, life unfolds in layers that are rarely seen but constantly active. Small animals move beneath snow, following paths carved through generations of survival instinct. Bears roam these lands with a presence that commands respect. In spring and summer, they move across valleys and riverbanks, guided by seasonal cycles that determine survival. Their strength is not just physical. It is environmental understanding, knowing when to move, where to feed, and how to adapt to a landscape that offers abundance only at specific times. Wolves move differently, quiet, coordinated, and deeply connected as packs. They traverse long distances through forests and open tundra. Their communication is subtle, expressed through movement, posture, and sound that carries across vast spaces. In Yukon, their presence is felt even when they are not seen. A reminder that the wilderness is never empty. Above it all, the sky belongs to eagles. They circle high above valleys and rivers, riding invisible currents of air with effortless control. From such heights, they see everything. Every movement on the ground, every shift in the landscape. Their perspective reflects the vastness of Yukon itself, where distance is measured not just in space, but in awareness. Seasons dictate everything. In warmer months, life expands outward. Animals move freely, feeding, traveling, and raising young under long daylight hours that stretch time itself. The land becomes active, filled with movement that follows ancient cycles. Rivers run strong, forests grow dense, and life spreads across valleys, invisible patterns. But when winter arrives, everything changes. The world slows. Snow covers the ground in thick silence, and survival becomes a test of adaptation. Animals adjust instinctively. Some migrate, traveling vast distances in search of food and warmer conditions. Others remain, relying on stored energy, hidden pathways, and deep knowledge of the land. The cold here is not just temperature, it is structure. It shapes behavior, movement, and even sound. Footsteps are muted, breaths become visible. Every action requires awareness. Yet even in this harshness, life continues without pause. It does not retreat, it adjusts. In frozen rivers and snow-covered plains, subtle signs of life remain visible to those who know how to read them. Tracks in snow reveal silent journeys taken during the night. Broken branches indicate movement through dense forest. Even stillness becomes information, part of a larger conversation between land and survival. There is a balance here that feels almost precise. No excess, no waste. Every creature plays a role within a system that has evolved over thousands of years. Predators and the prey exist in constant relationship, not as isolated forces, but as parts of a continuous cycle that sustains the ecosystem. In this environment, instinct replaces uncertainty. Animals do not hesitate. They respond. They move with purpose, shaped by generations of adaptation. Survival is not a struggle against nature. It is participation in it. Even human presence here is shaped by this same principle. Those who live in Yukon understand that life cannot be separated from environment. Respect for wildlife is not optional. It is essential. Every encounter, every season, every journey is guided by awareness of the land and its inhabitants. As the day progresses, movement becomes more visible. Herds shift across valleys. Birds trace paths through open sky. Forests echo with distant activity that is rarely seen but always present. The wilderness is not silent. It is simply not centered around human perception. In evening light, everything slows again. Shadows stretch across terrain, and animals retreat into patterns of rest or continued movement depending on instinct and need. The landscape settles into a quiet rhythm that feels both ancient and continuous. At night, Yukon transforms once more. Darkness deepens, and sound becomes more distant. Yet, life does not stop. It continues in subtle forms, beneath snow, within forests, across frozen terrain. The wilderness remains active, even when invisible. To observe wildlife in Yukon is to understand balance in its purest form. It is not about dominance or control. It is about coexistence within limits defined by environment rather than preference. Every creature exists because it has learned to belong here, not to change it. And in that understanding lies something profound, a realization that life in its most natural state is not chaotic, but structured. Not random, but deeply connected. The wilderness of Yukon is not separate from life. It is life, in its most unfiltered and honest form. There are places where history does not fade into books or museums, but remains embedded in the ground, in the buildings, and in the silence between streets. Dawson City is one of those places. Hidden deep in Yukon, it feels less like a modern settlement and more like a preserved memory of a time when hope, desperation, and gold brought thousands of people into the far north. As you arrive, the first impression is not of size or modernity, but of character. Wooden buildings line the streets, weathered by time and shaped by harsh winters. Their colors are faded but honest, as if the town has refused to forget what it once was. The roads are simple, the layout modest, yet everything here carries weight. Every structure feels like it has witnessed something important. This was once the heart of the Klondike Gold Rush, one of the most dramatic migrations in North American history. In the late 1800s, news of gold in the Yukon spread like fire across the world. People abandoned cities, crossed oceans, and endured unimaginable journeys just to reach this remote corner of the earth. They came with dreams of fortune, but most found hardship instead. Dawson City became the center of that rush, a place where fortunes were imagined, lost, and occasionally found. Tents once covered these lands. Temporary shelters filled every available space. Streets were crowded with miners, traders, dreamers, and those simply trying to survive the chaos of sudden opportunity. Today, the chaos is gone, but its echo remains. Walking through Dawson City feels like stepping through a quiet version of its own history. The buildings still stand in their original style, many preserved or restored to reflect their past. Wooden sidewalks creak underfoot. Old storefronts display signs that feel untouched by time. It is not a recreation. It is continuity. The Klondike River flows nearby, the same river that once carried miners, supplies, and stories of hope and exhaustion. Its waters move steadily, indifferent to the human ambition that once surged along its banks. In summer, it reflects long northern daylight, calm and wide. In winter, it freezes into silence, becoming part of the frozen landscape that defines this region. There is something cinematic about the way Dawson City exists today, not because it is staged, but because it has remained true to itself. Modern life has arrived, but it has not overwritten the past. Instead, both coexist. A cafe may sit inside a building that once served miners. A modern vehicle may pass by a structure that stood during the gold rush. Time overlaps here instead of replacing itself. The stories of the gold rush are not just historical facts in Dawson City. They are part of the atmosphere. Every corner seems to hold a fragment of narrative. Tales of fortune seekers crossing treacherous mountain passes. Stories of rivers frozen solid, forcing travelers to walk across ice for days. Accounts of exhaustion, survival, and the rare moments of success that kept the dream alive. The land itself played a decisive role in shaping these stories. Yukon does not offer easy paths. The terrain is vast, remote, and often unforgiving. Those who arrived during the gold rush quickly realized that reaching Dawson City was only the beginning of their struggle. Survival depended not just on luck, but on endurance, cooperation, and adaptability. Even today, the surrounding wilderness reminds visitors of that reality. Beyond the town, forests stretch endlessly. Mountains rise in the distance, silent and unmoving. Rivers continue their ancient flow, untouched by human ambition. It is easy to understand why this place was both irresistible and unforgiving to those who came searching for gold. One of the most striking aspects of Dawson City is its silence. Not complete silence, but a softened version of it, shaped by space and history. You can walk through streets and feel as though the past is walking alongside you, not as ghosts or illusions, but as presence embedded in environment. In certain areas, old mining equipment still remains. Rusted structures and abandoned tools sit quietly, reminders of intense labor that once defined this land. These objects are not displayed as artifacts behind glass. They exist where they were left, slowly becoming part of the landscape again. The gold rush itself was brief in historical terms, but its impact was permanent. It reshaped Yukon's identity, bringing global attention to a region previously known only to indigenous communities and explorers. It created towns, trade routes, and infrastructure that will continue long after the gold deposits declined. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of Dawson City is not the gold or the history, but the contrast between past and present. Life continues here, quietly and steadily, without erasing what came before. Children walk the same streets that miners once rushed through. Festivals and gatherings take place where once there was only tents and uncertainty. At night, the town transforms again. Lights glow softly from wooden buildings, reflecting on quiet streets. The sky above is vast and clear, filled with stars that feel closer than in most places on Earth. There is no rush here, no overwhelming noise, only the slow continuation of life in a place shaped by memory. And in that stillness, Dawson City reveals its true nature. It is not just a historical site. It is a living archive, a place where time has not been erased, but layered, where the past is not gone, but gently held within the present. To walk through it is to understand that history is not always something behind us. Sometimes, it is something we are still standing inside. There comes a moment in Yukon when the world seems to fall completely silent, when color fades into white, and when the air itself feels sharper, heavier, almost tangible. This is winter in the far north. Not just a season, but a transformation, a shift so complete that it reshapes the land, the sky, and every living thing that calls this place home. As the first snow begins to fall, it does not arrive with chaos. It settles slowly, covering the ground in a soft, steady layer that grows deeper with each passing day. Forests that once stood in shades of green become coated in white, their branches bending gently under the weight. Rivers slow, their surfaces beginning to freeze, while lakes turn into vast, solid mirrors stretching across the landscape. In time, the transformation becomes absolute. The land is no longer defined by its colors, but by its shapes. Hills, valleys, and forests blend into a continuous expanse of snow and ice, where boundaries become softer and distances harder to judge. Everything feels larger, more open, and yet somehow more enclosed at the same time. The cold in Yukon is not like ordinary winter. It is deep, persistent, and powerful. Temperatures drop far below what most people have ever experienced, creating conditions that demand respect and preparation. Breath turns instantly into visible mist. Skin reacts quickly to exposure. Even sound behaves differently, traveling farther and echoing through the stillness. Yet, within this extreme environment, life does not disappear. It adapts. The wilderness continues, quieter, but no less active. Animals move through snow-covered terrain using paths carved over time. Some burrow beneath the surface, using the insulating properties of snow to survive. Others grow thicker fur, conserving heat and energy as they navigate the frozen world. Moose move slowly through forests, their dark forms standing out against the white surroundings. Wolves travel across long distances, their tracks leaving temporary marks on an otherwise untouched surface. Birds that remain in winter adjust their behavior, feeding carefully and conserving energy in an environment where resources are limited. Every movement is purposeful. Every action matters. For humans, winter in Yukon requires a different kind of understanding. Life slows, not out of choice, but out of necessity. Activities are planned carefully. Travel becomes more deliberate. Homes are prepared to withstand long periods of cold and darkness. It is a season that teaches patience, awareness, and respect for conditions that cannot be controlled. The days grow shorter, and darkness arrives early. But this darkness is not empty. It carries its own kind of beauty. The sky becomes deeper, richer, filled with stars that shine with unusual clarity. Without the interference of city lights, the night feels expansive, almost infinite. Constellations stretch across the sky, and the quiet allows every detail to be noticed. In this stillness, the land feels different. Frozen lakes become pathways, their surfaces strong enough to carry weight where water once flowed freely. Snow-covered trails connect remote areas, creating routes that only exist during this season. The environment reshapes itself, offering new possibilities while removing others. There is a unique kind of silence in winter. It is not simply the absence of sound, but a presence of quiet that feels layered and deep. Snow absorbs noise, softening footsteps and muting movement. Even the wind seems quieter, moving gently across open spaces without the resistance of leaves or flowing water. Sunlight, when it appears, carries a different quality. It sits lower in the sky, casting long shadows that stretch across the snow. The light reflects off ice and frozen surfaces, creating a brightness that feels almost surreal. Even the smallest details, a single branch, a set of tracks, a ripple in frozen water, stand out with sharp clarity. Despite its harshness, winter in Yukon has a kind of purity. It strips the landscape down to its most essential elements. There are no distractions, no excess, just land, sky, and the quiet movement of life, adapting to extreme conditions. It is a season that reveals the true nature of the environment, showing how everything is connected through survival and balance. For those who experience it, winter here is not just something to endure. It is something to understand. It teaches awareness of temperature, light, and time. It changes the way you move, the way you think, and even the way you perceive distance and space. As night settles over the frozen land, the stillness becomes complete. Snow stretches endlessly in every direction, reflecting faint light from the sky above. Forests stand motionless, their shapes softened by frost. The world feels paused, as if time itself has slowed to match the rhythm of the season. And yet, beneath that stillness, life continues, quiet, steady, and resilient. The wilderness does not stop. It simply adapts, finding ways to exist even in the coldest, darkest conditions. Winter in Yukon is not defined by hardship alone. It is defined by transformation. A reminder that even in the most extreme environments, life persists, not through resistance, but through understanding and balance. Long before maps defined borders or roads connected distant places, Yukon was already alive with stories, knowledge, and deep understanding of the land. This is not just a wilderness shaped by nature alone, but a homeland shaped by people who have lived in harmony with it for thousands of years. The indigenous cultures of Yukon are not separate from the land. They are part of it, woven into its rivers, forests, mountains, and seasons in ways that go far beyond what can be seen. As you move through this northern world, there is a presence that cannot be measured in distance or time. It is carried in quiet traditions, in the way the land is respected rather than controlled, and in the knowledge passed from one generation to the next. This knowledge is not written in books or confined to a single place. It lives in memory, in language, and in the everyday relationship between people and the environment. For indigenous communities in Yukon, the land is not just a resource. It is a living system, a source of identity, and a guide for life. Every river has meaning. Every mountain holds significance. Even the smallest changes in weather or wildlife behavior are understood as part of a larger pattern. Survival here has never been about domination. It has always been about balance. Traditional knowledge, often passed down through storytelling, reflects this connection. Stories are not simply entertainment. They are lessons, warnings, and ways of understanding the world. They teach how to travel safely across frozen rivers, how to read animal tracks, how to prepare for changing seasons, and how to respect the boundaries of nature. In a land where conditions can shift quickly, this knowledge is essential. The Yukon River, the forests, and the mountains have always been part of daily life. Travel routes were established long before modern roads, guided by natural landmarks and seasonal patterns. Hunting, fishing, and gathering were not random activities, but carefully timed practices that ensured sustainability. Nothing was taken without purpose, and nothing was wasted. This approach allowed communities to live in some of the most extreme conditions on Earth without disrupting the balance of the environment. Cultural practices reflect this deep relationship with nature. Tools, clothing, and shelter were created using materials from the land, each designed to withstand the northern climate. Every detail had meaning. Every design served a function. Even today, these traditions continue, adapted to modern life, but still rooted in the same principles of respect and understanding. There is also a strong spiritual connection to the land. For many indigenous cultures in Yukon, nature is not separate from the spiritual world. Animals, rivers, and landscapes are seen as interconnected with life in ways that go beyond physical existence. This perspective creates a sense of responsibility, not just to survive, but to protect and honor the environment that provides everything. As seasons change, so do the rhythms of life. Summer brings long days and opportunities for gathering and travel. Winter brings stillness and reflection, a time when knowledge is shared and traditions are reinforced. These cycles are not interruptions. They are the structure of life itself, shaping how communities move, think, and exist within the land. Even today, despite the presence of modern infrastructure and technology, these connections remain strong. Indigenous communities continue to practice traditions, teach younger generations, and maintain their relationship with the environment. Language, stories, and cultural practices are preserved, ensuring that knowledge is not lost but carried forward. There is a quiet strength in this continuity. It does not demand attention, but it is always present. It can be felt in the way people speak about the land, in the respect shown toward wildlife, and in the understanding that survival here is not just physical, but cultural and spiritual as well. Visitors to Yukon may see vast wilderness, towering mountains, and endless forests, but there is another layer beneath that surface, a layer shaped by human experience over thousands of years, a layer that holds meaning, history, and identity. Without it, the land would still be beautiful, but it would not be complete. Walking through this environment with awareness changes the experience entirely. A river is no longer just water flowing through a valley. It becomes a pathway, a source of life, a connection between communities. A forest is no longer just trees. It becomes shelter, food, and history. Every element of the landscape gains depth when seen through the perspective of those who have lived within it for generations. There is also a lesson in this way of life, a reminder that progress does not always mean separation from nature, that it is possible to live within an environment without disrupting its balance. That knowledge built over time, through observation and respect, can be just as valuable as modern technology. As the day comes to an end and the northern sky begins to darken, the land settles into its familiar rhythm, the same rhythm that has existed for centuries. Stories continue to be shared. Knowledge continues to be passed on. Life continues, not in opposition to nature, but in partnership with it. And in that partnership lies something profound, a way of understanding the world that goes beyond survival, beyond exploration, beyond even time itself. A way of living that reminds us that the land is not something we own, but something we are part of. There are places in the world that impress you for a moment, and then there are places that stay with you long after you have left. Yukon belongs to the second kind. It is not loud, not crowded, not built to demand attention. And yet, by the time the journey begins to end, it becomes clear that this land has quietly changed something within you. From the very first step into its vast wilderness, Yukon reveals a truth that is easy to forget in modern life, that the world is still wild, that there are still places where nature is not controlled, not shaped for convenience, but allowed to exist in its full, unfiltered form. Here, mountains rise without interruption, rivers flow without boundaries, and forests stretch beyond what the eye can follow. Each moment in this land feels connected to something larger. The silence is not empty, it is full of presence. The distances are not just physical, they are emotional, creating space to think, to observe, and to understand. Time feels different here, not because it slows down, but because it is no longer measured by schedules or urgency. It moves with the land itself. The journey through Yukon is not defined by a single destination. It is shaped by experiences. The quiet streets of Whitehorse, the endless
flow of the Yukon River, the towering peaks of Kluane, the historic stillness of Dawson City, the deep silence of winter, and the living traditions of Indigenous cultures. Each place adds a layer to the story, creating a complete picture of a land that refuses to be simplified. There is a raw honesty here that cannot be replicated. Nothing is exaggerated, nothing is artificial. What you see is exactly what exists. And in that honesty, there is a kind of beauty that feels rare. It does not try to impress. It simply exists, waiting to be experienced by those willing to step into it. As the journey comes closer to its final moments, there is a realization that Yukon is not just a place you visit. It is a place you feel. It stays with you in subtle ways, in the memory of endless landscapes, in the sound of wind moving through trees, in the image of mountains standing against a wide northern sky. Even the smallest moments become significant here. The reflection of light on frozen water, the quiet movement of wildlife in the distance, the way the sky changes color at the edge of day. These are not dramatic events, but they carry a depth that makes them unforgettable. There is also a sense of perspective that comes with experiencing a place like this, a reminder of how small human life is compared to the scale of the natural world. Not in a way that feels insignificant, but in a way that feels grounding. It shifts the focus from control to appreciation, from speed to awareness.
Yukon does not offer easy comfort. It demands attention, respect, and patience. But in return, it offers something that cannot be found in places shaped entirely by human design. It offers authenticity, a direct connection to land, to time, and to the fundamental rhythms of life. As the final light of the day fades and the wilderness settles into quiet darkness, the journey reaches its closing moment. The sky stretches endlessly above, filled with stars that feel closer than anywhere else. The land below remains still, vast, and unchanged. It is a scene that feels both complete and ongoing at the same time. Because Yukon does not truly end. It continues beyond the edges of the journey, beyond the limits of what can be seen in a single visit. It remains as it always has, vast, silent, and alive. And perhaps that is its greatest impact. Not what it shows, but what it reminds us of. That there are still places in the world where nature leads, where silence speaks, and where life exists in its most natural form. As you leave this land behind, the memory does not fade. It stays, quiet but constant, like the landscapes themselves. A reminder that somewhere, far from the noise and movement of everyday life, there is a place where the world is still wild, still pure, and still waiting. Yukon is not just a place you visit. It is something you carry with you, a reminder that the world is still wild, still vast, and still waiting to be explored. If this journey moved you, make sure to